Tonight, the escalating feud between two of America's most powerful men. Elon Musk threatens to form a new political party to challenge Donald Trump. The US president warns he'll look into deporting his former ally.
We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon.
The row is over Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, which was today voted through by the US Senate. It is a sprawling piece of legislation that slashes subsidized healthcare and food stamps to pay for tax cuts and mass deportations. That is why the US president was in Florida today, touring the facility dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. The new migrant detention center is surrounded by swampland. Tonight, I hear from an activist who is against it. Also coming up, the leaked phone call that's left the Prime Minister of Thailand fighting for her political future. And wildfires in Turkey, the top of the Eiffel Tower shut, and an invasion of love bugs in South Korea, all caused by the extreme heat. That's all coming up on The World with me, Anna Botting. Hello, good evening. It is the ultimate symbol of Donald Trump's aggressive immigration policy, a hastily constructed tent city that will house 5,000 people as they wait to be deported from the United States. Built on an isolated airfield, it's been nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz. That's because it's in the middle of the Everglades, surrounded by cobra and alligator-infested swampland.
We have a lot of bodyguards and a lot of cops that are in the form of alligators. You don't have to pay them so much.
People get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons.
Well, Alligator Alcatraz is the idea of Florida's Attorney General and has been embraced by many in the administration. And over the past weeks and months, tens of thousands suspected of being illegal immigrants have been rounded up on construction sites, in homes, on farms. We'll focus on that tonight. And on a fiery dispute reignited today by the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. Does Donald Trump really want to deport his former ally, Elon Musk? We'll have more on that in a moment, but first, here's our US correspondent Mark Stone on the immigration arrests happening across America.
No les abras!
¿Por qué le pegas?
What you're doing is kidnapping!
Behind the flurry of news from this White House, something's been happening.
Hey, he's bleeding, dog, he's bleeding!
In plain sight across America.
Since Donald Trump became president again, people suspected of being in America illegally are being rounded up and detained. Previous presidents did the same. The difference now is the methods and no judicial process.
This is Ladera Heights, Los Angeles, 11 a.m. on Monday, June the 23rd.
Don't answer any questions. You don't have to say anything. No.
26-year-old Selena Ramirez holding a tree.
What you're doing is kidnapping.
To prevent herself being taken by masked men. They were later confirmed to be working for ICE,
Are you kidding me?
the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency.
Who are you? Who are you?
She came to America illegally 2 years ago in search of a better life. She's married with a 4-year-old son.
Seriously, 8 of you?
The ICE agents reportedly showed no warrant and they did not identify themselves. She was taken away. Lawyers have been trying to track her location, but say they've not been able to find out where she was taken.
They're kidnapping her.
It's believed she was what's known as undocumented. If that's the case, and we don't know for sure because the authorities won't reveal any details, then that means she had no visa or asylum claim lodged. But under US law, she should still be given the right to a lawyer and a fair hearing.
Yo, look at this, look at this.
La Puente, California, Thursday the 26th of June. This man, whose identity is not known, was removed from his car, pulled to the ground and detained. Eyewitnesses say he did not resist the agents.
The arrests are generating significant protests. Locals are filming the incidents, and in some cases, they are being arrested too.
This is outside a branch of Home Depot in Hollywood, Los Angeles.
Hey, no les abras!
Thursday, June the 19th. Job Garcia was filming the arrest of another man. shouting and swearing at the agents, and then this.
You want to go to jail? Fine. You got it.
¿Por qué le pegas?
And this is Santa Ana, again in California, Saturday the 21st of June. 48-year-old Narciso Barranco tackled and beaten by masked agents. Also undocumented, he was gardening, and the agents said he tried to use a strimmer to defend himself. His son, a US Marine, said his father had no criminal record. By no means all the arrests have been confrontational, but on construction sites, in private businesses, in homes, on the streets, and on farmland, those suspected of being here illegally are being rounded up.
The agents are carrying out spot checks as well.
This is Savannah, Georgia, just after 7 a.m. on Friday, June the 6th. ICE agents and local police pull over a van they suspect is carrying undocumented people. They are detained, among them a young mother. She was held for a while, then released when her visa was confirmed. She's now home with her 2 children, but her husband, well, he was detained and has not been seen since. Tom Homan is President Trump's border czar, doubling down.
If you're in the country legally, you should be concerned. It's not okay to be in the country illegally. If you're a national security threat, you should be working. We're looking for you.
The Trump administration claims that their priority is violent criminals, but the truth across America looks very different.
185,042 people have been arrested and taken into ICE facilities since October last year. This includes the last few months of the Biden administration. According to ICE's own data, almost half of those detained have never been convicted nor charged with any crime. And of those who do have criminal records, most are for immigration and traffic offences.
But according to NBC News data analysis, 752 of those arrested are known to have been convicted of murder abroad before coming to America. That, though, represents just 6% of the total number of people detained.
Well, it is against that backdrop, thousands of arrests in plain sight, that alligator Alcatraz was conceived. Donald Trump visited the detention centre today alongside his Homeland Security Secretary and the governor of Florida. It has been described as a callous political stunt, but could soon be the temporary home for up to 3,000 people. Well, let's bring in Tessa Petit, who is Chief Executive of the Florida Immigrant Coalition, a movement that advocates for migrant rights. And goodness me, what a job you have at the moment. So alligator Alcatraz, a literal hostile environment. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think of it?
It's just a continuation of the cruelty that we're seeing against immigrants. We are very well aware that we've not been doing a good job at holding immigrants in detention. We've seen a rising number of deaths in ICE detention, and putting 3,000 beds in the middle of the Everglades, an area that has been devastated by hurricanes in the past, especially when we're headed towards hurricane season. Temporary infrastructures quickly built in the span of a week. If in long-standing infrastructures they've not been able to provide access to healthcare, we know we're expecting the worst. They have not been providing food to detainees. They have not been providing proper sanitary environments. This may look brand new, but once it's filled, and most likely they will also overload it the same way that they have overloaded other facilities, it's just going to be another inhumane, dehumanizing detention camp. And we call them camps because that's what it's going to be for our immigrants.
So help us understand how people are being apprehended by ICE agents. How are they found? Are they targeted? Is it random? Is it as simple as, weirdly, in the melting pot of America, looking foreign?
So there are certain areas that are targeted, right? So I'm in Florida, and we're very well aware that in certain areas on highways close to rural areas, they have Florida Highway Patrol that is looking for those contractor trucks, right? Because they know that likely there will be undocumented immigrants. They also do visits in immigrant-owned businesses or restaurants or places where they know that it's mostly our immigrant folks who are working there. You've seen the raids at Home Depot because they know that the Home Depot workers are likely to be undocumented immigrants. They do raids at construction sites because they know that that's where undocumented immigrants are. We are also seeing raids in churches. We are seeing them turn up in healthcare facilities, and the only thing that stands between them and protecting immigrant communities is for our folks to know their constitutional rights and to be surrounded with people who also know their constitutional rights to protect them as much as possible.
And the fact that Donald Trump, through his campaign and now has labelled immigrants criminals, has it impacted all those who are living in America as immigrants, the biggest immigrant population in the world, 53.3 million foreign-born residents. That's 15.8% of the total population in the States. Is everybody living in fear because of what's happening?
Every immigrant is currently in fear because we are very well aware that there is not just an attack on undocumented immigrants, there is also a plan to remove immigration status from those who have it. There are more and more barriers that are coming up to remove immigration status. They're also talking about enforcing the denaturalization of naturalized citizens. So there is an effort to get rid of everyone who is an immigrant. Now, of course, if you don't have an issue with your status, you will be a little bit more confident, but that doesn't mean that you don't feel uncomfortable when you walk by an ICE agent or if you see a raid happening. But one thing is sure, we're making sure that we're being very careful not to commit even the minor traffic violation, because we feel that we're at a point where everything and anything we do will be held against us, and that is including our social media content, any opinion that we have had when it comes to Palestine, Israel, or whatever they decide to come up with that suddenly displeases them. The list gets longer every day.
But do you accept, though, that immigration levels are simply too high in America and something needed to be done? This idea of a hostile environment, we joked about the alligators and cobras surrounding this site in Florida is a literal hostile environment. But people need to be put off coming to America?
Currently, I would tell to anyone, there are still, I believe, there are still pathways to come to America. We do know also that America is being very intentional about what kind of immigrants they want to have now, but there are still pathways to coming to America. If America is your destination,
it's about regaining control of your immigration policy.
Regaining control, there are policies that are established. Those policies have been enforced. There are systems that have been enforced. The CBP-1 existed. People were being interviewed. Yes, there was an increase of people requesting access to the United States. And we've seen that migration throughout the world. It's not just the United States. People are migrating because there are issues around the world. There were systems for asylum. Yes, there was a time where they had concerns at the border, but they had established systems to better control their border. And all they needed to do was work on those systems. But so many of these people that you're seeing them being called illegal are people who were granted access through CBP-1, were people who were waiting for their immigration check-in or waiting for their court appointment, are people who were in the system delayed because the system also does not work properly, but it is a system that existed. So this rhetoric that there was so many issues, yes, there were issues with the border, but what you're saying, what you're hearing is not the reality.
Tessa Petit, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for giving us that picture, both in Florida and more broadly. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, now. So, Mark, alligators as free security guards, according to Mr. Trump, a compound thrown together by the state of Florida in a matter of days. Is this classic gesture politics or signs of a president who really means business?
I think it's both, to be honest, Anna. The first point to make, just picking up from what your guest just said there, notwithstanding what she said, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find many people in America that wouldn't agree that over the past, I was going to say 5 years, but probably over the past decade, maybe longer, America's immigration policies have been broken. Democrats and Republicans all agree on that. And through the Biden administration, it was chaos. The southern border from Mexico into the United States was objectively very, very chaotic. Now, what we are seeing now is the very hard line, dare I say, Trumpian response to that legacy of problems. The second point to make, and I think it was viscerally clear in the videos that we put together in the report you ran just now, is that what Trump's administration is doing is very hardline and is not following due process. The people that are being rounded up, and some of them, some of it is being caught on camera, a lot of it clearly is not. In many cases, these are people who have done nothing wrong except for having come here illegally. And the Trump administration obviously points to that and says that alone is a crime and that alone justifies the treatment that they're now getting. But in many of the cases, they are actually here perfectly legally. You saw one woman in my report there who has a visa, but it took a long time for them to establish that. And in the process, she was dealt with in an extremely hardline way. So yes, to your point a few moments ago, it is about looking foreign. And these ICE agents, who very often are not identifiable as ICE agents, sometimes they wear Border Patrol vests, but not always, and they don't provide any papers or any warrants to arrest these people. They are just looking for people who look like they're not white and who are therefore detaining them. And what will now happen to these people, and this is what's crucial, is that they will be sent to Alligator Alcatraz, where they will then, according to Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security chief, they will then face due process in this camp. And then if they are found to be illegal, they will then be put on that airstrip and they will be sent back to their home country. But they'll only face due process once they're inside these cages and beds within cages in this place down in Florida. So many questions about the humanity here. But what the Trump administration says, and we've heard them saying it so many times, in response to that issue of due process, they say, well, hang on a minute, we've got 1 million or more illegal migrants here. Are we supposed to put them all through a court process? And the critics will say, well, yes, you are supposed to put them all through a court process because that is the law of the land. That is what being American is all about.
And Mark, the Homeland Security Secretary, who travelled with the president, said in a round table in Florida today that a cannibal migrant deported from the US had tried to eat himself on the plane, describing the centre as a place for deranged individuals who don't belong in America, but also suggesting this idea of self-deportation. If they don't leave, they never get the chance to come back. So are they hoping that people who have arrived illegally will do the job for them?
Well, 2 points there. First of all, on your second point, yes, they are hoping that all the optics around this alligator Alcatraz, and incidentally, in the photo ops today, that we didn't actually see any alligators at all. But the idea behind it is to the messaging to people is self-deport, and the Trump administration will buy people flights so that if they are here illegally, they can self-deport. Those that don't self-deport or might have deep roots here, because remember, a lot of these people here have been here decades. Illegally, yes, but in a system which, as I said, is broken, and now find themselves being forced to go back to a home they may not have any familiarity with. So if they choose not to self-deport, go to ground and they are caught, then they will end up in facilities like this. But Kristi Noem, she kind of contradicted herself as well, because she said only the real crazies are going to go to Alligator Alcatraz. And yet Donald Trump, the president, said that the real crazies, the murderers and all the rest of it, they won't go here. They will go straight into a jail. So it's not clear who exactly is going to end up here. And I think from the confusion that we've seen across the country, it is very likely that many of the people who end up here will
will be people who have committed no crime except for the crime of having come here illegally, taking advantage of a system that has been broken over decades.
Mark Stone, it has been a fascinating day. Thank you very much indeed. Well, Donald Trump's trip to Florida was only a fleeting one. Back in Washington, his so-called big, beautiful bill was passed by the Senate, with the vice president casting the deciding vote. Essential to the president's second-term agenda, he's promised it will bring in some of the biggest tax cuts in US history. It'll affect almost every American in some way. So what is actually in it? Well, the policy bill extends tax rates created during Donald Trump's first term and adds new tax cuts. To fund the plans, the Medicaid programme has been targeted. 72 million people rely on the scheme for health coverage, but the bill would add new limits and restrictions on who can claim. More money will be put forward towards Donald Trump's immigration plans. The enforcement agency, ICE, will receive $45 billion for detention facilities and an additional $14 billion for deportation operations. Experts, though, think the bill will add more than $3 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Well, Elon Musk described the bill as utterly insane and destructive. And asked today if he would consider deporting Elon Musk, President Trump paused, then said this.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car.
Well, our correspondent in Washington, David Blevins, joins me now. Well, it absolutely has reignited the row between Musk and Trump, David, from threatening to unseat politicians to pulling subsidies for Musk's business. That détente between the two, well and truly over.
Yeah, seconds away, round two, Anna, just when you thought that Donald Trump and Elon Musk might have called a truce. They're back in the boxing ring, and this time it is over that central piece of legislation fueling Donald Trump's second-term agenda in the White House. Elon Musk calls the big, beautiful bill political suicide. He says it's betrayal. He's threatening to set up a new political party and challenge in next year's midterm elections any Republicans who voted for this bill, and that has prompted another day of back and forth. The president this morning suggesting that he could pull Musk's lucrative government contracts, that he might even consider deporting him back to South Africa, or that he might ask the Department of Government Efficiency to have a closer look at the man who for 3 months was the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. Musk responded to that on his own X platform, writing, so tempted to escalate this, so tempting, but I will refrain for now. The question is, how long will he refrain from taking the gloves off completely when the big, beautiful bill he so opposes has now cleared a second hurdle and is on its way back to the House of Representatives?
Yes, indeed, the one big, beautiful bill passing the Senate. Why, though, did it lead to 27 hours of debate on the Senate floor? Why is it so controversial?
Well, I think it's been a case study in the complexities of American lawmaking, and that's because there are two real issues of contention. This is 940 pages of tax cuts and government spending priorities, bankrolling the president's second term in the White House, as I say. But for Democrats and indeed for some Republicans, the price is too high. They say it's going to cut Medicaid, that's the program that provides health care to millions of lower-income Americans. But for others, the issue is what it's going to do to the national debt. That's Elon Musk's concern. He claims it's going to increase America's national debt, which already stands at an eye-watering $37 trillion, by another $5 trillion. And he thinks that's too high a price to pay. And I think it would be impossible to overstate just how finely balanced this is. The big, beautiful bill passed in the House of Representatives by one single vote after hours and hours of debates and procedure in the Senate. It was passed today by the casting vote of the Vice President, who broke a 50-50 tie, and that sends it back now to the House of Representatives. But given how low a majority the Republicans have in the House right now, and given the debate that's going on around this and what Elon Musk is threatening to do, Donald Trump can't be absolutely certain this is going to clear the House in the coming days.
David Blevins on the boxing bout and the big, beautiful bill. Thank you. Well, you're watching The World with me, Anna Botting. Still to come, we will speak to one of the global charities demanding an end to what's become a deadly aid delivery system in Gaza.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
We're rolling.
Welcome to The World.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
More than 170 charities are calling for a US and Israeli-backed aid organisation in Gaza to be dismantled. Since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation took over aid distribution in May, people have been shot and attacked near food pickup points guarded by Israeli forces. Well, part of a statement from the charities reads, "Today, Palestinians in Gaza face an impossible choice: starve or risk being shot while desperately trying to reach food to feed their families." The weeks following the launch of the Israeli distribution scheme have been some of the deadliest and most violent since October 2023. In less than 4 weeks, more than 500 Palestinians have been killed and almost 4,000 injured just trying to access or distribute food. Israeli forces and armed groups, some reportedly operating with backing from Israeli authorities, now routinely open fire on desperate civilians. Well, the Israeli military acknowledged yesterday that Palestinian civilians have been harmed at the new aid distribution centres and added that its forces had been issued new instructions following what it called lessons learned. It insists soldiers are trying to prevent aid from falling into the hands of Hamas. Well, Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, is one of the signatories to that letter from NGOs. I spoke earlier to Dr. Mohammed Abu Mahasib, MSF's Deputy Medical Coordinator in Palestine, and began by asking him why the current aid system is falling and how dangerous it is.
In this red zone in Gaza, 4 distribution points, it's chaotic. There is no system at all. They just offload the material and boxes in a big space. And of course, thousands of people are going, mainly men, who are trying to fight to get the food. So it's really unhuman. It's dangerous. And of course, as I mentioned, there's a lot of injuries ongoing every distribution time.
Well, in your view, are civilians deliberately being targeted, something that Israel has denied on multiple occasions, as has the head of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation?
What we saw actually, what we saw in our hospital, the way we are functioning, and the testimonies of these injured, they have been shot. It's the Israeli side who are shooting, the Israeli army. They admitted even, in the report that has been released recently by Harris. It's unhuman totally what's going on. The injuries are they are shooting just to scare, I think, the people who are going by thousands, but actually they are killing and injuring. And of course, this is a burden on the hospital, which has no capacity, the remaining hospital, which has no capacity of beds, no emergency beds, no OTA rooms for them to be operated. And a lot of them had died because they are waiting to be treated in these hospitals.
So describe that fight for food then. These are barbed wire surrounded, football field-sized areas, one entry, one exit point, and all in full control of Israeli forces.
Exactly. This is what, as well, the people who, we see them. I am every day at morning, I wake up on the shooting, and I know that when there is started shooting from machine guns, I know that there is a distribution time. So if you go early, you are shot. The people are shot at. If you go at time, you have to fight. People are fighting. People are fighting for food because they are since more than 100 days there is no food entering. So they have this acute hunger stage. People fighting each other. And if you go late, you are shot. So what is claiming that they are claiming, the GHF, that they are posting in their web page that they have the schedule of opening. But the people in Gaza, they don't have internet. The majority of them, and they don't follow they don't have website to follow this kind of schedule. So it's really chaotic what's going on, and we see a lot of injuries, and it's difficult injuries. Shot in the head, in the chest, in the abdomen, and lower extremities.
Well, Israel says it's fired warning shots towards suspects. Do you think their tone has changed? They have acknowledged civilians have come to harm. They've raised or issued new guidance to those on the ground, new signage as well, new fencing, opened new routes to get to those distribution sites. Are you hopeful that change is underway, or does it need a radical system change to the way people get food and aid?
I hope after the report that has been released by Harris, I think things will change. But until today, still there is people that has been shot at in this distribution point. Some of them have been killed, some of them have been injured. So nothing changed on the ground. Until the moment, still the hospitals are overwhelmed with these new category of injuries. Because the hospitals have been overwhelmed with the injuries that are coming from airstrikes, from the shelling. Now it's a new category and a new burden on these hospitals with these new injuries that are arriving to the hospital. And I'm telling you, these type of injuries, gunshot injuries, are very difficult. They need surgical intervention. And of course, there is no space to do surgery now. The OT rooms are completely occupied. The emergency department are totally occupied. So majority of them, they will die. And they died, some of them.
What do you want to see happen then in terms of the distribution of food? To go back to the old system, you know that Israel has no confidence in UNRWA. It felt that Hamas stole the aid. You know, there is a reluctance on the part of the Israelis, or indeed the Americans, to go back.
I think they have to go to the old system, standard humanitarian system that has been since the beginning of the war. I mean, through the UN system. I mean, there was more than 400 distribution points. I mean, they can go back to this system because 4 distribution points in a red zone area, on a chaotic situation, in a dangerous situation, this has not to, that's had to stop really. And I mean, it's enough. I mean, that has to stop.
Well, we know that Benjamin Netanyahu is travelling to the White House on Monday. Presumably, the prospect of a ceasefire on the table for those discussions. You know, how hopeful are people there that something might change?
I mean, hope is a fragile, really word now in Gaza. I mean, what is really concerning everyone that if you are lucky to live one day more, that's the hope, I mean, in Gaza. So people really lost hope about ceasefire or about reaching an agreement. I mean, it's more than 630 days now of this war, continuous war, 24 hours over 7 airstrikes, bombing, just destruction. I think people here, we reach, you know, this time that hope is really, again, is a fragile word, and, you know.
Dr. Mohammed Abu Mughaisib, Deputy Medical Coordinator for Médecins Sans Frontières in Palestine. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. So the views there of those inside Gaza on trying to get food to people. We understand that the jury concerned with deciding the fate of Sean P. Diddy Combs is coming back into the courtroom. We're trying to find out more information to that. We will come back as soon as we can to the courthouse in New York, facing a number of charges, what could mean life in jail for the hip-hop mogul on those allegations. But we will return with that very shortly. Next up, though, also on Sky News, turbulence in Thailand as the country's Prime Minister is suspended over a leaked phone call. Is it another threat to a political dynasty?
In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Thousands of Russians were drafted. For some, the reality of frontline warfare meant one thing: desertion.
I had a rush of adrenaline. It was a kind of treason.
But they did not escape on their own.
I help people to desert Russian army.
The stakes are high, but for some, there's no other option.
We keep going till Putin's regime is over.
Escaping Putin on Sky News.
gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Well, let's bring you the very latest then from the courthouse in New York, which has been hearing over 6 weeks of testimony, a case against Sean P. Diddy Combs. Over 6 weeks then, two of Combs's former girlfriends, the rhythm and blues singer Cassie Cassandra Ventura and a woman known in court by the pseudonym Jane, told jurors that he forced them to take part in the performances with paid male escorts, sometimes known as freak-offs, while he watched and occasionally filmed. Both women testified that Combs had beaten them, and jurors saw a hotel surveillance video showing Combs attacking Ventura in a hallway back in 2016. He faces a number of charges, including a racketeering conspiracy, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. All charges that he has denied, though the court did not hear from him. Well, our correspondent, Martha Kellner, is at the court in New York. And just give your assessment, Martha, of what you think is happening.
Yes, certainly a moment of high drama in this case, Anna. I think we do have a partial verdict from the jury. Just to explain what's happened in the past 10 minutes or so, the judge received a note from the jury room. The attorneys from both sides, from the government and from Sean Diddy Combs' defence team, gathered in that room together. Sean Combs had his head in his hands. The government's prosecution team seemed pretty unemotional. The judge then read out a note saying the jury has reached a partial verdict. So just to recap, Sean Diddy Combs faces 5 separate criminal counts. 1 count of racketeering, 2 counts of sex trafficking and 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. Well, the most serious of those charges is count 1. That's the racketeering charge. This jury says that they've not been able to reach a verdict on that charge. They say that's due to some of the jurors being unpersuadable on that charge. However, they do say they have a verdict on the 4 other charges, so the sex trafficking charges and the transportation for prostitution charges. The sex trafficking charges alone carry a sentence of a minimum of 15 years to life. So those are very serious charges in and of themselves. What's not clear yet is whether this judge is going to accept a partial verdict from the jury. He has asked both the defence team and the prosecution team to provide him with their views, and then he will make a decision. But certainly a hugely dramatic moment in this case. Sean Diddy Combs, the man who rose from relatively humble beginnings. He grew up in Harlem, New York, not 10 miles from this courthouse. He spent the last 10 months in prison awaiting this trial. He now faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. It could be that we hear at least a partial verdict from this jury in the coming minutes and hours. It's really a wait and see at the moment, Anna.
And what has Combs's lawyers said his defence is? Because he has acknowledged that at times he was violent in domestic relationships, even saying if he was charged with domestic violence, we wouldn't all be here.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they can't really deny that he was violent in these relationships, because there is a video that's been played numerous times to this jury which shows Sean Combs in the corridor of a hotel room in Los Angeles, apparently dragging his then girlfriend Cassie Cassandra Ventura, who was a pop star. He was in a relationship with her for more than a decade, and he was very clearly physically beating her in this disturbing footage, which this court has been shown on many occasions. So his
defence team say, no doubt about it, this is a flawed individual. This is a man who was violent in these relationships that he had. But the prosecution case is that he forced and coerced his partners into having sex with male prostitutes in these drug-fuelled parties that he referred to as freak-offs. Well, Sean Combs's defence team says that simply isn't true. He says that these women were willing participants in these sex marathons. They say that this was simply Sean Combs's private life, which has been turned into a crime scene. Interestingly, though, Anna, while the prosecution case lasted 28 days, 35 different witnesses on the stand, the defence case lasted just 25 minutes. Much of their case, in fact, was centred on the cross-examination of the witnesses, particularly the two key women in this case, Cassandra Ventura, Cassie, who is the former pop star, and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane. They said that these women were motivated by money, by financial gain, and in fact they had been in consensual relations with Sean Combs.
The early part of this trial was hearing from his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. What was the case that she made against him?
Yeah, really this whole case hinges around Cassie Ventura. She was the one who filed a civil lawsuit against Sean Combs back in 2023. They settled that case out of court extremely quickly. She received $20 million, but that allowed the government to then launch this investigation into Sean Combs. And as such, she has been the star witness for the government's case. She took the stand very early on. She was one of their first witnesses. And I think she was particularly affecting, Anna, because she was so heavily pregnant when she took the stand. In fact, she gave birth just a week after giving testimony here. I spoke to a seasoned trial lawyer at the time about her evidence, and they said that she was the most heavily pregnant witness that they can ever remember giving evidence in a criminal trial. But her testimony was incredibly disturbing at times. She detailed this more than a decade-long relationship she had with Sean Combs. They met when she was still a teenager. At the time, she had a hit pop record. She was signed to his music label for a 10-album deal. Well, in the end, she only ever released one other album. She says her job became satisfying his every sexual desire. Much of the prosecution case centred on how she was forced to partake in freak-offs. These were the drug-fuelled sex marathons where she alleges she was forced to have sex with a number of male escort sex workers. Sometimes these sessions would last days and the participants would have to have IV drips in order to recover afterwards. She said that their relationship was characterised by a major power and wealth imbalance. She said not only did he coerce her into sex, but that he regularly beat her. She said, in fact, on one occasion, he beat her so severely that she had to be hidden in a hotel room in order to recover from her injuries. And not only did the jury hear this disturbing testimony, they actually watched it too. The jury was played videos. These were entered as sealed evidence, so the public, journalists inside the courtroom, weren't able to see them. But what they showed were these freak-offs, these sex parties that Sean Combs would allegedly direct. And at one point, a male juror, pulled the headphones from his head, apparently unable to bear watching these videos anymore. So, those jurors have sat through some extremely disturbing detail. And when the judge in this case, Arun Subramanian, when he dismissed the jury to go back to the jury room and consider their verdict, he thanked them for their service. They've been in this courtroom for 7 weeks now. It does appear they have at least reached a partial verdict, although we're not yet sure whether the judge is going to accept a partial verdict in lieu of the full verdict. And specifically, that missing verdict on the racketeering conspiracy charge, which is the most serious of the charges that Sean Combs faces.
Yes, indeed. Just to repeat for those who have just joined us, the jury in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs has reached a verdict on 4 of 5 counts now, telling the court they are unable to agree on the racketeering charge, sending a note, we are unable to reach a verdict on count 1 as we have jurors with unpersuadable opinions on both sides. We're told, Martha, that Diddy himself is sitting surrounded by his 8 lawyers, talking to him with serious expressions, looking down, his hands crossed on his lap. The judge then asked the attorneys for suggestions on how to handle this. Prosecutors want the judge to read an Allen charge. Defence wants them to continue deliberating, saying they will not take a partial verdict. Both sides will submit their proposals to the judge, and he will then decide how to proceed and then bring them back in soon to speak to them. So it seems we're in something of a hiatus. The verdict has been reached on counts 2, 3, 4 and 5, but not, Martha, that serious count 1, which is the racketeering conspiracy.
Yeah, a huge moment of jeopardy in this case. And from what I'm hearing inside the court, that's very obvious in the demeanour of Sean Diddy Combs. He knows that the rest of his life hinges on the verdict that these 8 men and 4 women are about to deliver. I'm told that several of his children have now entered the courtroom. 6 of his 7 children have been present throughout almost all of this trial. He has twin daughters who are just 18 years old. He has older sons. One of his children is still a toddler, so obviously hasn't been inside court. His mother, Janice, has been there for almost the entirety of this trial. And when the judge sent the jury to deliberate a couple of days ago, his family gathered together. They held hands in prayer. They then all clapped. They left the room. And Sean Combs was left alone, hunched over his laptop. And you really got a clear sense of just how much his life has changed. You know, he was on top of the world, just a 3 years ago. He had hundreds of millions of dollars to his name. His personal fortune has been dented now by numerous civil lawsuits that he's settled. But this is a man who used to think of himself as the king of this city. He used to go anywhere he wanted. Everyone would know his name. Some of the witnesses in this case said he was even more powerful than the police in this city. So I think you get a sense from that of his downfall. But I don't know whether it's helpful as well, Anna, for me to just detail the criminal count, which this jury says they've not been able to reach a verdict on due to at least one of the jurors being unpersuadable on the racketeering charge. So the racketeering conspiracy charge, which is the most serious of all the criminal counts that Sean Combs faces. It carries a potential sentence of life in prison. And interestingly, this racketeering charge is usually applied to multi-person crime organisations like the mafia. It's used in order to take down the head honcho and not just the foot soldiers. But in recent years, it has been applied in a more modern sense. In fact, it was applied in the trial of R. Kelly, another R&B music star. It was also applied in a case in Georgia against President Donald Trump. In order to reach a verdict on this case, in order to reach a guilty verdict on this case, the jury must decide that Sean Diddy Combs ran an enterprise to commit and cover up his crimes. So not just that he had an ordinary celebrity entourage, but that he used a network of employees, so bodyguards, assistants and so on, in order to cover up sex trafficking, drug distribution and other crimes. When explaining why the government believes that Sean Combs is guilty of racketeering, the prosecutors said that he was the general and not a foot soldier. One of the prosecutors, Christy Slavic, said, "Remember, this is his kingdom. Everyone was there to serve him." But the defence team almost laughed off the prosecution case. They said that the charges against him were greatly exaggerated.
The moment. Thank you very much indeed. We will return with Sky News at 10. 4 out of 5 counts have now been decided by the jury in the case of Sean P. Diddy Combs.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast. It's starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.